I just want to say one thing before we start. You don't look that much like Judge Rinder. just so you know, he's a lot better looking.
Every single freaking I honestly thought it was a joke at the beginning, and now literally people come up to me on the street thinking I'm Judge Rinder.
Have you seen his eyes are slightly more round?
You've really studied it?
I think so. That's what I've only seen him once in person, and I thought it was you at first, and then
you didn't.
And then I double taked. I was like, no, he's slightly taller, slightly more built,
slightly older.
Yeah, slightly older.
You and I have so many similarities. Yeah. In a way, I'm just older, which is really.
And you have a few more pillows.
I have a few more because my whole 5'8" doesn't reach the microphone, where your 6 foot whatever frame does. But we have lots of similarities where
we both did YouTube.
Well, I tried YouTube.
That's what we were also speaking before this, and I was asked when did I first meet you, and I was like, I think there was a time when Jamie wanted to be friends with every YouTuber on earth, and I just happened to be one of them.
Yeah. There was a lot of collaborations going on YouTube, and I'd obviously done a TV show. And I thought, well, digital is where it's at, and you guys were just killing it, and it was insane, and I just wanted to move into that space. Yeah. And when I was going into YouTube, I was like, well, I'm on a huge TV show. Yeah. I'm going to do one video. It's going to get 1 million views, and I'm going to get 1 million subscribers. I did a video every single week for 4 years. For 4 years, I got to 70,000 subscribers, and I made $3,000. And I did a video every week.
That's pretty bad, actually. That's probably the worst I've ever heard.
Is it really?
But it took me 2 years to get 1,000 subscribers. But then the next 2 years got to 300,000. So I didn't have the same constant struggle you did, but I think the very beginning's hard for some people. And it sounds like for you at the time, just getting from you started probably with 5,000 or whatever from TV, and then getting to 70 sounded pretty tough. But I think you've done okay. I did a speed awareness course recently. Have you done one of these?
I still don't drive. I booked my theory test 70 times.
Stop.
70 times since I was 18. Dude,
what?
Yeah, I know, man. I failed it 10 times, and my theory is that if I keep failing it, at some point I'll pass it. And I never looked into it. I promise you, we'll grasp similarities between ourselves in terms of how we learn things and exams and all these different things.
I passed my theory first time.
Did you really?
Yeah. You can't pull me into
that. I pulled you
into
it. We're so similar, man. Get with it.
But yeah, there was some interesting learnings from the speed awareness course. It was a humbling experience. But one of the things that
how fast were you going on the motorway?
I was going 4 over a 30, so 34, which I'd say it's not
gangster.
that bad. It's really bad. My coach on the speed awareness course made it very clear how dangerous it was.
Coach.
So he he also said
the guy who took the speed awareness, not your coach.
He's my he was like a life coach. He gave us some really cool principles, and it reminded me of it. When you're in a traffic jam and you're so pissed off at everyone, you're never driving, so you might not know this feeling, but you might be in the back seat. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what the fuck? Why is everyone here? You're also there. You're also causing the traffic jam. Did you ever think about that, Jamie? You like that?
I like that.
That's what my coach taught me. And take that with me everywhere.
Yeah,
put it in your pocket.
But that's an interesting thing, because that's basically what we're saying, is that we live our lives a little bit where we're just focusing on ourselves. Yeah. And actually what we got to start doing is we got to start focusing on other people.
We can clip this up and stick it on TikTok.
That's going to get views, baby. but I think that's a because I would say I would say that you are one of these people who are quite you're considerate, you're kind, you're thoughtful, you're empathetic. I think but I do, and I also know what's funny is that you find it quite tricky to talk about yourself. So what you'll do is, if I give you a compliment, you're almost deflected in a certain way, because you actually still can't take it on board. So if I give you a compliment, take it. You should do, man, because you are very kind, and I think anyone you've probably worked with would say, if you said, what is Caspar like? You'd say, he's just a great dude.
Yeah, that's the invisible thing. I'd love to go and hear that for sure, because you never know. You think you put in all this effort to be nice, and people are just shit talking you. No, but you know what? I think it's a very British thing, and I'm not British, but I'm from South Africa, and I think it's quite a similar thing there. Whereas in America, it's really good to take compliments. In England, I think you're so right. We need to get better at complimenting each other and taking compliments, because I do think, even though it's just words, especially when you're in a business environment, you might go, oh, it's just words. I don't want to, get that energy going. But I think that energy can have a massive impact on a team of people. So something I'm trying to do more of with my partners and people. I want to tell them how much I appreciate them out loud, because I say it in my head, but I'm too embarrassed to sometimes say it with my words.
Why are you embarrassed to say it with your words?
It's just again, I don't know if it's something about coming here 11, 12 years ago and the way people talk to each other. It's like it's a sign of love when you say something negative about someone. It shows you're close enough. Yeah. Like when I first came here, I started making fun of your height.
Yeah, it's true. That's what happens.
I was trying to show you that we're friends, but actually I should be like, Jamie, you're looking super tall today, bro.
But that would be a lie.
But maybe it would just bring the vibe up. I don't know. Maybe it's too much.
No, that's not too much. It's a really interesting point. So when you work in America, it's very much about building each individual up. Yeah. Where over here in the UK, you're so right, we build each other down, but that shows a great connection.
Yeah, which is interesting. But I do think that ultimately, even though it shows that connection, I do think it has a net. Let's go back to net and gross. A net negative impact. And it's something I want to change a bit. I don't want to become cringe. I don't want to start being super I don't want to lie about your height, but I definitely want to make people around me feel a little bit better.
But explain that. Why do you think it has a negative? Why do you think it has a negative?
I think it builds emotions, but ultimately I think when we get used to speaking negatively and acting negatively, I think the energy in the team and so on just creates a culture of speaking negatively about each other. And when I'm in America with the American teams, I just ultimately feel like they're constantly uplifting each other. There is, obviously it's not always, but the kind of overall arching theme is that. And I think that impacts, decision-making, the ability for people to take risks. And the ability, I think, is such a big thing. When you feel good about yourself or good about the day you've had, the way you work is just so much better. When you feel bad, it's so much worse. And I think in England we kind of don't believe that actually has an effect. So
there's a big thing which I learned from a guy called Mark Price, who said that people would rather be congratulated for the work that they've done than to be given a pay rise.
100%. This book, like there's the 5 love languages book, and then there's the 5 work kind of appreciation languages, because they don't want to use the word love. Yeah. And that's exactly what they said. Like, you've got to work out how to make different people feel appreciated. Some people like words. Some people like quality time, some people like 3 other things. And it's super important to do that. And just giving them the pay rise, that's also very important. We're not going to sit here as business owners and be like, we don't want to pay people well, they don't care about it. Of course they care about it. But I think emotionally every single day what hits them more is the appreciation.
When you talk about that sort of giving yourself sort of positive energy and talking to yourself, have you always spoken to yourself positively, or did you used to speak negatively to yourself?
No, I think negatively.
In what ways?
More in ways of fear. Like I had this voice, especially just after lockdown, and I don't know if it was the transition from being a YouTuber to being someone who isn't doing YouTube and an entrepreneur or whatever. I just had this kind of anxious feeling, and I'd be like, if I was invited on a podcast, we spoke about a podcast earlier that I was invited on, and I just said, no, I don't want to go, because I was just too scared to do it. And that was that negative voice, and it was just so loud. And today I got up, and it was like this weird moment that I clearly remember. Got out the shower, I was kind of singing in the shower, I wasn't very nervous. Obviously it has to do with the podcast host as well. But I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh. And I said to myself, I'm so proud of you. Like 2 years ago, you would have hated to do this. And today you're like excited. And that only happened because I went towards the stuff that I was scared of. And so I definitely have seen the shift. And it's so important to say nice things. And if you can write nice things, that's even better. But some people struggle to find the time to do so.
That is so interesting. Like, no one would ever expect someone. I think this is someone who did YouTube for so long, who was so successful on that platform, be able to film themselves and put content out there and be vulnerable at times and be excited at times with the different things, that you actually have that fear within you. That you can go and talk in front of 100, 200, 300 people. I've seen you on stages talking business wherever it is, but sometimes in intimate situations, you can become a bit nervous.
No, it was a time where I was scared to go on a date with my fiancée. That's how crazy it got at like a certain time, like after lockdown. And that was, I don't know if that was feeling, it wasn't anything to do with her. It wasn't anything to do with the person. It was just feeling scared of getting anxious. And then the worst thing to me was getting really anxious in a situation where you should not be anxious, right? And whereas like, so on the stage in front of like a lot of people, I would have a different sort of nerves, but I was like, this is expected. I should be nervous. Whereas the more nuanced stuff got me really freaked out. So yeah, it's something I went through. I spoke a little bit about it. I didn't speak too much about it. And now looking back, it taught me so much because now I know how to deal with those things a little bit better. Touch wood, it never, it could happen again. There could be another major Earth event that somehow leads me to get into the spiral. But in a good place at the moment.
But did you speak to your fiancée about it? Because that's quite hard to approach, right?
I didn't really. I didn't tell her during it so much, and I think she understood.
You internalize it. Everyone does. Yeah. Always, yeah.
And I think it's more the feeling. I think she understood that I was just anxious, going through an anxious time in my life. And yeah, she was super supportive. The hard thing was, when my mother was coming to visit, I don't see her very much. Yeah. And so when I felt anxious about, again, it wasn't her, it was just going to dinner with someone in a very relaxed environment. I was worried that she thought it was because I was something to do with her, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a really difficult period, but
it's funny because what you're describing is so normal. So basically, you're describing the situation, which is okay. Let me give you an example. So people who are really friendly in life, and they never get cross, and they take a lot of shit from people or whatever it is, whether it's the workplace, relationship, friendship, whatever it is. Typically, when they go on the road and they start driving a car and someone cuts them off, they can scream and shout at them because they're able to release anger in that moment because there's a reason, someone's cut me off, I can get angry at them. Yeah. So they become very angry. They get road rage, or they can be rude when, I don't know, a takeaway comes and it's the wrong order. Yeah. And they get over the top, irritated or angry about it because in their normal life, they're not expressing themselves. And what's funny as you're describing is that what so many people feel is that being on stage in front of those people, you're expected to be anxious. So it's fine. This feeling is okay. Yeah. But you're so scared of the feeling that in normal everyday life, you just don't want to feel it. Yeah. So you just don't even want to approach those situations because you're so scared of it. Yeah. And then fear is the worst thing in the world because when you fear something and you're so scared of it, it only perpetuates, makes it worse and worse and worse. And you avoid it, right? And you avoid it.
And so that was I did speak to someone about this, and what they helped with is they're like, look,
you did therapy?
Yeah. So this is brought to you by BetterHelp.
Probably is.
But
are you comfortable talking about this?
Yeah, of course.
Great.
Yeah, I talk. It's to me, it's like gym. So yeah, what he said, he said a few things. One was, his method was like, I'm not here forever. I'm just gonna work with you for a little bit, and then eventually he told me you're fine, kind of thing. I don't know if that's the best method, but it worked with me. And he basically was like, you need to start doing these things that scare you. Don't do them all at once and overwhelm yourself, but just know like you avoiding them is the worst thing you can do. And so it was like, doing little bits at a time. A big part of it was weird, like driving, like being in a car. I felt again like stuck. Again, this is so strange to talk about now because like I love driving. And so he'd say, just go for a 10-minute drive on your own quickly. Okay, make it 15 minutes, make it 20 minutes. You're anxious going for meals. Okay, well, go for a meal on your own first. Okay, now take someone who, I would say take someone who you love very much, but that was what was making me anxious. So take someone you don't give a fuck about.
Yeah, because that's what you then use easier.
And then slowly build your way up and train yourself. And it was weird. There was another moment during those things where I was like, I'm just so scared. What happens if I'm one day anxious, like with my kids, like even hanging out with my kids? And he's like, Caspar, stop worrying about the future so much. I promise you're going to be okay. And so far so good. I feel like I could have kids now and it'll be fine.
I dealt with like anxiety really badly over the years. And for so long, and I've spoken about this before, but for so long, when I first got given this diagnosis of anxiety, right, I was like, well, I don't want it. I don't want it. Yeah. Get this away from me. What can I take? I would have taken anything. Okay, I can get drunk if I drink a beer. I can get entertained if I watch YouTube. I'll take anything right now to get rid of this. And they said, well, you'll learn to live with it. And I went, what the fuck do you mean I'll learn to live with it? I don't want to learn to live with this. I want it to go. That sort of advice is, I always say, it's kind of the worst piece of advice you can get given at the beginning, but it's also the best. Because as soon as you start accepting, acceptance, man, is freaking everything. Yeah. And it's the hardest thing to do in life. Yeah. Accepting that we haven't got the job offer, accepting that our business has potentially failed, accepting that the relationship hasn't worked, accepting that we have anxiety, I have tinnitus, accepting that I have... Once you start accepting things, that is the road to kind of freedom. And it's the hardest thing to do, I swear to God, as a human. Yeah. I used to watch your videos, first because I just wanted desperate to know about YouTube, but also it was just, I don't know, it was so engaging in a way that I can't describe. I don't know why it was engaging, and it still slightly baffles me why it was. But,
thanks, Jimmy.
No, but it was. But
was it not the writing?
I don't know. It was so engaging. Yeah. And I remember people used to see me watching it, and they'd be like, "What are you watching?" I'd be like, "I'm watching Caspar." And people who didn't watch YouTube would be confused why you're watching someone else do stuff. They didn't really get that. The first video that you ever made, what was it?
It was me in a bath, basically naked. I'm sure I was wearing some Speedos or something. Basically playing a character. I called him Dick of Africa. Which in hindsight is a really weird name, but my middle name was Richard, and so I thought it'd get me some more clicks. Should I just leave the story there?
Just leave the story there.
No, so I was basically saying, is bathing more difficult than showering? I thought that was content. That was what the people wanted to know on YouTube. But really, they couldn't give a shit.
But hang on a second. How did you know that people? Because
that didn't do well, by the way. No one cared.
No one cared. But how did you? Because this is entrepreneurial. Yeah. Like through and through.
Just throw it out.
Yeah. Because I came across YouTube, right? Yeah. I saw it as a platform that videos were being posted on, and typically it was like cats or whatever it was. I didn't look at it as a platform, a playground that I could play on. I had a video camera wherever I went as a kid. I filmed freaking everything. Yeah. But I never thought about posting that on a platform in order to get views or subscribers.
You were like a celebrity CEO when you were a child.
Yeah, I took it everywhere. Honestly, I've got all this footage. But I didn't see YouTube as a platform for business. Yeah. But you did. You saw an opportunity there.
A little bit. I don't know if I knew it was like going to be a big money maker at the time. I thought it would get me going back to the Tourette's and like trying to impress the girls next to me. I thought maybe if I had some level of following on this platform, it could impress the girls in my class. And I think at the time, it was 2010, they didn't care about that kind of thing. Maybe how many Facebook friends you had was important, but having subscribers on YouTube, that didn't mean anything. But to me it did, because I'd become a fan.
You saw YouTube as an opportunity. You started posting the videos on it. You started getting subscribers. You started getting followers. What was your first paycheck from it?
Ooh, it would have been like, I think you get $100 check the first time you get to $100. So that would have been after like a year or two, maybe $100. So what did you say you made?
$3 grand. $4 grand over 3 years or whatever it was.
But that's hard to pay rent in Chelsea. So
yeah, I was not paying any rent for that.
So yeah, it would have been $100. And then I got on this website called YouNow, which basically, did you ever go on YouNow? A lot of YouTubers kind of built their career on there. It was this platform where you could, it was like an open mic. So someone would be on and they would have like 1,000 people watching. And then there would be a line of like 10 people. And as soon as they get voted off, which is quite cutthroat, you can come on. So I'd time it perfectly that I'd always go after the other YouTubers. And I went after people like Alfie Days, Marcus Butler, Jack's Gap. And I would say, oh, like, I'd kind of pretend we were friends, and like, I love these guys, I'm just like them. And so like maybe 10% of those people would subscribe to me. And eventually they realized like I was catching up to them. And then I got on a flight. I don't know if everyone remembers Jack Harris, Finn Harris. Yeah. They're still doing great things, but they left YouTube a long time ago. I got picked up, I went to Jack's house. I was like 18, 17. Wow. And I think a lot of parents would have maybe not let their kids do that, but luckily my parents are pretty easygoing. And that was the start of everything. Once I collaborated with them, I realized like I could collaborate with everyone. And that's my strategy with a lot of things. If you can start with like the best, everyone will follow, and Jack and Finn were the best.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
So you think if that way about, if you, I totally agree with you. If if you connect with the best, it's always about quality and always about keeping it and never cut corners. I think too many people in life want to cut corners. So how old were you did your first video on YouTube?
16 and then 18 when I started doing it professionally.
Did it become an obsession?
Oh yeah. So
is that healthy at that age?
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely impacted my studies. Like I was a scholarship kid because we couldn't afford the school, and so I somehow managed to get the grades to get that. And one of the things was like you gotta keep your grades high, and it impacted those. But I think again, going back to the school and the culture, they were kind of impressed by what I was doing, and there was a time when I needed a microphone, so I said to them, I'll make a movie for you guys, and then they bought me the microphone. And so I think if I didn't end up becoming a YouTuber and I wanted to go to university to study law, it would have stopped that from being possible because my marks were pretty bad by the time I was 18.
But you had then curved up this career where you were this entertainer on YouTube, and you had how many followers did you have by the end?
So by the end of YouTube itself, like 7 million subscribers, and I kind of wanted to end on a high. I didn't want to just keep going forever, and YouTube got to a place where I realized the level of content you have to upload to keep this going, especially if you've been doing it for 10 years and you know, people aren't just there because you're relevant, they're there because of your content now. I couldn't focus on that and try and do the business stuff at the same time. So I was like, let's leave it here. It wasn't like something I planned. I was like, I'm going to take a few weeks off. And then I realized, wow, this is pretty good. I can now focus on something else. And one day, you know, I could always come back to YouTube. There's
a few things I want to see about this, because leaving something behind, and especially something that is successful and starting a new thing, is one of the hardest things to do in life. Yeah. And actually most people just don't do it because they're too scared, they're fearful of the future. But before we get into that, I want to understand, you know, and try and be as open as you can, because I think it's a mystery for everyone. Yeah. YouTube is always known that they're making money. And it's done on a CPM, right? Yeah. Which is a cost per metric. Yeah. So every 1,000 views you get paid a certain amount.
Exactly.
In the heyday, you don't have to say yourself, but what were YouTubers making per month?
So the way I did, I can be quite open about it. The way I did it was like 90% of my revenue came from brand deals. Mm-hmm. So that is when I have a sponsor within a video rather than the AdSense, which is the pre-roll adverts, or the YouTube Premium. They divvy up all of the subscription fees. And so 90% of that was coming from brand deals, 10% from AdSense. That's because I wasn't uploading that consistently. I was like doing it once a week versus someone who does it every day. You know, people, when you talk about CPMs, back in those days, I think I was making like a £3 CPM. So £3 per 1,000 views. It's getting like 20 million views a month. You can do the math, but if you times that by 10 because of the brand deal stuff, then it really was quite ridiculous.
So I'm going to do this. So it's 20 million. Let's just work this out. Let's just have a look.
I don't know if...
I'm going to do it. 20 million
I wonder if this works out to what it was.
Divided by 1,000 is that. Then times that by 3. So it's about 60K a month.
And then you times that by, I guess, 10.
Because 600,000 a month.
Oh, is this a month?
That was 20 million on 20 million views a month.
Okay, no, it wasn't that. I wasn't making quite that. So
what can I? If I
but let me just give you. I'm not going to tell you what I was making for clear, but I think most YouTubers with those subscribers back then was making over £1 million a year, pounds, wow. And they didn't really have any expenses. And then
because your overheads are so little.
Yeah, because they weren't doing like Mr. Beast level stuff. And then, but now I think anyone with that amount of subscribers should really be making kind of like 3 to 5 million a year.
Why has it gone up so much?
It's just there's so many more opportunities. This brand, you know, the amount of brands working with creators, you know, the willingness for the audience to actually spend money on this stuff. It used to be so kind of taboo to charge your audience for any sort of product. Because you were seen as a complete sellout. Because
it's a free platform,
exactly.
So everything should be free.
And so, you know, I know a lot of creators now who don't even have 1 million followers on a platform, and they can be making $1 million a year just through the right collaborations. But a lot of that comes down to now. So take me, for example. I had a lot of followers, which is why I made quite, you know, a lot of money. And you know, someone today, even if they don't have a lot of followers, if they have the right following, they can still make a lot of money. So say they do golf videos or like equestrian or something very specific.
Niche.
that can make your CPM, 3 CPM. Some people would look at that and laugh. If they were like a finance creator, they can be doing like 20 to 30 CPM.
Which is so 20 to 30 pounds per 1,000 listeners, 1,000 views.
Exactly. And that's just on the videos that aren't sponsored. And that's just on the stuff that isn't. So this world is quite ridiculous. And a lot of, creators I meet today, because I do, got a management business and stuff, a lot of them want to also go on TV. And as good as UK TV is, I'm like, you have no idea how good you have it doing this. So do the TV stuff too, potentially, because it's great brand uplift for you. And it can help. But from a business perspective, you can't expect to compare the two.
But it's interesting, right? Because that sort of digital world, which you're talking about and which you're part of and which you were a trailblazer in, that is taking over our current world. Linear television channel in the UK, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, it's really struggling. Advertisers are drawing money away from it. This year, they've seen another drop in 13% in ad sales. All those different things are going on. And so you feel like the digital world is taking over. However, for some reason, there is this still glazed look on television. That's the pinnacle. That's what you got to get to. It doesn't pay well. It's long hours. It costs a lot of money to make, but people still want to do it.
They all want to be Jamie Laing.
Yeah, they all want to be.
And all the Jamie Langs want to be them.
But do you know what it's...
And now you're both.
I try to drift into both. But what's interesting about that is, okay, I remember when we won a BAFTA for Made in Chelsea. Yeah. And it was the most exciting moment of my life, but it was also the most embarrassing moment. Because I walked onto stage and looked into the audience and saw Olivia Colman and Hugh Laurie and all these amazing people looking up at us and thinking, we have spent the last 10, 20, 30 years training towards this. Yeah. And you've just gone on a TV show and acted yourself and you are up on the stage winning BAFTA. So it was a very humbling moment for me. And I think what happened with YouTubers as well, and I think the reason why I think it was irritating for those professionals is because they felt like their jobs were under threat. Yeah. When YouTube came along, or this digital world came along, the reason why there was a negative connotations towards TikTokers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, whatever it is because the people in the television world, reality stars in particular, shit, you're going to take our jobs away from us. I think, and so therefore it's this sort of hierarchy that kept looking down, because everyone was worried that their jobs were going to go.
And the worst part about it is also the journalists. I'm not saying all journalists, but you could see how influencers or creators were kind of seen as the new version of media in that way. And so before, when like a car brand used to take a bunch of journalists on a trip to talk about the new Audi, they now, they took the journalists too, but they started bringing creators as well. And I think that, when you read about creators in the media, it's usually fairly negative, and the word influencer
is negative.
Doesn't have the best connotation, and that's also because media in general don't like to write positive stuff that doesn't get clicks. But I do think it also is because of that hierarchy of like, why the hell are you able to make like $1 million a year making TikToks where you don't do any work? But I think what they kind of don't see is that yes, there are from time to time people who have crazy viral success without any work, and that's like winning the lottery. But for the majority of people, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And especially today, it's more competitive than it's ever been. It's the most sought after job in the world. So if you do get there, I do believe they deserve kind of the levels they're getting to.
If someone said that you could be a superhero, what superhero would you be?
I've always, I think, wanted to be invisible. So who's the one in Fantastic Four who's invisible, or is that not a thing?
There is someone he does, he goes invisible,
doesn't he?
There is.
Yeah?
That's the girl who goes invisible.
Yeah, so I want to be Susan Storm, and I think I kind of look like her too.
But hang on a second, this is interesting because obviously this like lays into who you are as a person. Why do you want your superpower to be invisibility?
So you've gone fully Stephen Bartlett on me already.
This is how I open you up, baby. This is how I open you up.
Why do I want to be invisible? I'd love to hear what people are saying about me behind my back. That would be really interesting. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a great way to like rob big banks.
Okay.
Every now and then for fun. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to be at a party or something, and it would be fun to just completely go invisible. But to be fair, I just go to the toilet sometimes and pretend I'm having a very long wee. And so there's other ways to do it. But
I think everyone does that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's honestly, I think this what I've noticed recently is that, and I had this for a while, because what you're kind of talking about is like sort of social anxiety in a way, right? Like I think social anxiety is on such a rise, and I think that's definitely because we have become so connected in the world through devices and whatever that actually we've become disconnected. Like I definitely see that. Like I definitely see that with me sometimes, that I would prefer sometimes to stay in and sit on my phone rather than going out. But then I get FOMO at the same time because I'm not out with everyone. Yeah. Do you get that?
Yeah. So I don't get so much. I don't get FOMO so much. I've become quite a homebody, but I think the reason is similar to what you said around. The reason when I'm out that I maybe get a bit, not anxious, but like I'm just, oh God, this is not as exciting as being on my phone, is because of the dopamine hit I'm constantly getting on my phone, on social media. And I think it's a bit harder to get that in real life. So I definitely feel a lot better after going out and spending time, even if it's sometimes not as exciting as, being on TikTok. And I guess that kind of leads me on to the fact that like things that aren't instantly gratifying always usually make me feel the best afterwards. And so I've started to like try and go towards things I don't necessarily enjoy that much, things like running or gymming or doing podcasts, even though I'm enjoying this one. I used to not. And so the more I went towards those things, the more I'd walk away being like, I'm happy. So going to a party and being slightly bored would probably be more fulfilling than being at home completely comfortable.
The endorphin hit is this funny thing, right? Like I totally have that as well, where the way that you and I are, right, in terms of our brains, in terms of our minds, in terms of how we are in lots of different ways. I think if you were born in not the decade that you were born in this era, this social media time, this kind of place where actually you can be your own boss, right? Do you think you would be doing what you're doing, or do you think you would not be as successful as you are?
Yeah, I don't think I would be. I think we had a very good start to. I think you're referring to business as well, right? And that's where I've seen what you've done, and I was really inspired. And I think the reason I was able to get going the way I did was because of the social media. And for you, maybe it was the TV and the social media. So I think I would have tried to do it, and maybe it would have taken a lot longer to get there. I hope I would have figured something out. But what I learned from social media, I think, helped me not only be a platform to get into business, but also kind of help me do business, which I think, a key part of doing it is collaborating with people. And I had to learn that really early on from starting a YouTube channel in South Africa with, like, as I said, like 1,000 subscribers after 2 years. The only way I got to where I wasn't because I had a talent like Justin Bieber, or it was very funny. It was like collaborating with the right people and never like saying no. And again, I really respect you for that. Like you're so good at reaching out to everyone and just staying in touch and connections. And that's YouTube, that's business, that's I think life. And that's what I could say I'm good at. I don't like to say I'm super good at like YouTube videos or super good at a P&L, but connections. And I think that's something that's the most important part of what we do.
That's so interesting. I'm exactly the same. I said in my wedding speech, I said to my stepfather, who's chairman of both the candy business and the production one, I said to him in the speech, I said, thank you for teaching me the difference between gross and net profit. I'm sorry that I'll never know.
What's the difference?
You don't really know.
It's like, didn't Richard Branson say it's like the net is something, he remembered it because it was like throwing a net in the water, and it's like when you take out some of the expenses and
it's actually that. So we know what gross is. Gross is the top line basically of what totally we know, and that is the bottom line, right? That's what we kind of know. But I said to him, I'll never read a P&L. And I think that's what's kind of interesting in this space is that I generally believe, and I was saying this before, that I think if I wasn't living now, I'd be unemployable. And the reason I became an entrepreneur is because I was unemployable, so I had to employ myself. Do you find similarities with that, do you think?
I think you would be a camp guidance counselor. I think you would be a great one. Do you know what I mean?
I would go to Club Med and be like the windsurfer. But do you not think that? Come on, do you really think that you... Do you think you'd be unemployable? Do you think you could work for somebody else?
No. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I think I can adapt to situations. I'm trying to just say I am employable in case things go really wrong and someone watches this one day. But
because you're a true entrepreneur, that's what I mean. You really are.
Thank you. I mean, I think the way I do it, I definitely partner every business I'm involved in. I do quite a few things, and people ask, how do you do it all? It's because I've got a really good partner involved. And so and I feel with those partners, even though I don't work for them, I try and act like, I'm work for them because I want them to be happy. And so I like to think the way I do business and the way I try to be on time. I try to, even though people like us can be all over the place, I've really tried to rein that in over the last few years. So I think potentially could also get a job at Club Med. But you are right. I don't know if I'd like it. I think it would be a really big shock. However, there is also something when you have that structure of
routine,
that structure, and I find that's quite, as much as it's probably very difficult, and I'm not saying it's easy, that's something I might be drawn to, especially in times of stress when things aren't feeling like you're fully in control.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. The curse of running your own businesses and being an entrepreneur is that you feel constantly out of control. And I almost envy people who have that routine in their life where they get up, they go to the office, they come back, they have their holidays, they know what's coming in each month. They don't have to worry about, every employee in the company. That's what I sort of struggle with sometimes.
So that thing on holidays, there's this, I don't know if it's a stat, but there's this thing someone did where they said to people, you don't have any holidays. Like, you can take them whenever you want. There's no set days. You do have holidays, but there's no set days. And people ended up taking a lot less because of the lack of structure. And I think you end up sometimes not having, built-in systems, and entrepreneurs aren't very good at creating those for themselves. I think the good ones are great at creating those for their companies, but they don't always follow them, which I'm trying to do more of.
That's really interesting, because when people like those structures, so when the underground started, right, I had this thing where people were kind of going on the tube, but they weren't really taking it that much, and people couldn't understand why they weren't taking the underground. And what they did is then they put up a clock saying when the next train was going to arrive. Okay. So they said it was going to be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. They want to know. And then people taking the underground went up 4, 5, 6, 700, 800,000%, because there was the sense of the unknown now wasn't unknown. You knew what was happening. And actually, as humans, we want to know what's happening. Same as there's an analogy for traffic jams. If you gave people the option of sitting in a traffic jam for 45 minutes, but not knowing when the end was going to be 45 minutes, or taking a longer route round, but even though you're moving and you knowing how long it's going to take, you would take the longer route round just because you're like, okay, I know the end goal. People hate the unknown. Yeah. And I think, but with an entrepreneur, we actually don't mind not knowing the unknown. That's actually a little bit more exciting, I think.
Yeah, and part of me gets a little bit scared about what happens afterwards, or and I don't believe there will be, because I do quite a few different things, and even if one thing comes to an end or there's an exit or something, I'll have something else. But I hear from people who've put everything into one thing, and they finally get to where they wanted to get to. The day later, they're very happy, they're partying. A week later, they're like, oh, okay, this is a bit weird. And then 3 weeks later, they're like taking the train back to the office and looking into the windows and remembering the old days. And I think that is a little bit scary, but the fact that we know about it and talk about it, and the more we talk about these things, I think we're able to work them out and figure a way through.
What were you like as a kid? Were you an anxious kid? Were you an energetic kid? What were you like?
Growing up, no, not really. I mean, I have, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I have Tourette's. So growing up, that was kind of the thing I was dealing with more, which was more kind of just movements of my head or my eye, or whistling and stuff in class. And it was, it was difficult. But I had a great, group of friends. Living in South Africa, you do tons of sport, you get to be outside a lot. It was a great place to grow up. Sometimes
was the Tourette's hard though? Was it hard when you were younger? Because how do you understand what that is?
Yeah, so luckily when I was 6 years old, I kind of started realizing it for the first time. I went to my dad, and he was never diagnosed, but he was like, I think I kind of have the same thing. And my mom is like, she's so into any sort of medical treatment, anything. As soon as you have an issue, she knows what it is. She's like, she wanted to be a doctor.
It's like my mom. It's exactly the same as my mom.
So she took me straight to someone and got diagnosed at 6. and that was really helpful. When you become like 13, 14 with Tourette's, your hormones have a really negative impact on it. And you can, after, you're an adolescent, but when you become an adult, it can go one of two ways. Either it can get better or it can remain the same. Luckily for me, it's improved a lot. But yeah,
Why does it exaggerate it? Why does it when you get to hormones?
I think a few things. I think, stress levels, like what you're eating and so on. I think this, again, I don't want to claim to be an expert, but I think that time in your life is just super stressful. And Tourette's is usually something that also becomes a lot worse when you don't want it to be bad, similar to anxiety. And so these things are kind of connected. And so when you're in like a room, at school, you don't want to do it. There's like the cute girl next to you. You don't want them to think, you can't control your own movements. And so that would bring out the worst in it. And also, some kids make fun. It's an easy thing to make fun of. To me, it's one of the most difficult things some people can deal with. Again, I didn't have a lot of people think Tourette's is just verbal. But only a small percentage of people with Tourette's have the verbal Tourette's. But that is so difficult because you honestly say the words you don't want to say in that moment. And imagine being surrounded by strangers saying the worst possible things to those strangers, and you just can't control it. For me, the great analogy is like it's a really scratchy itch that won't really go away until you do it. And it's like, so it is slightly controllable in the sense of you can postpone it. But unless you somehow you get distracted or you do some other form of Tourette movement, it won't go away. And so there have been some therapies where like people have created systems whereby instead of doing the head movement, you do something more subtle. Maybe you move your finger without people noticing. And there are a few medications that are fairly good. But that is what, one of my dreams in life is if I ever get super, super duper successful, I'd love to try and help come up with more treatments or try and contribute to that treatment. I don't think I'll be in the laboratory myself. But
that's amazing. The fact that, but do you now get awkward or embarrassed about the situation at all? No,
I don't think so. I think it's something I'd say I'm slightly proud of now. Like,
great.
It's kind of cool I don't know if cool's the word, but to have at least gone through something that makes me slightly not different, but it means I've gone through something. I've gone through strife. I've lived through something quite difficult, and I think people appreciate that in this world. So yeah, definitely don't feel embarrassed about talking about it. But it's something a lot of people will meet me and they'll never know. So yeah.
It's funny that you say, because you then move out of YouTube, you start your businesses, and you have 4 different businesses. You have 4, and so each business. So you have a.
Yeah, I have. I'll quickly run through it. So, when in about 7 years ago, we spoke about the money earlier. Brands were 90% of my revenue, but they weren't doing it very well. They were just throwing money. It was usually a PR afterthought. They weren't tracking how things were doing for them. And so I met a guy called Ben. We co-founded a company called Influencer.com. And basically, we connect some of the world's biggest brands to thousands of creators. And we're able to do that with our platform Waves. And then, so that's like, you could see that as an agency where brands go to spend money, and then it filters down to the creators through either managers or directly to them. And we help with the strategy and so on. That business now has like 130 people. And we're in London and New York.
That's crazy.
It's been an amazing ride, and yeah, it's very cool to go from like 10 people to 50 people to then here, and you realize the different.
How many people do you have?
130.
Full time?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
what is the growth on that business year on year, would you say?
I mean, yeah, it's very good.
It's very healthy.
It's very healthy. It's profitable.
It's profitable as well.
Yeah, it's all the things you need in today's climate. We're very lucky. It hasn't been easy, but it's been great. And then outside of that, there's a business called MVE, which is a management business I co-founded with IMG. So I'm sure you know IMG Sports, IMG Models, and we manage about 90 creators between London and Los Angeles. And that's taking our expertise. I actually do that with Joe Sugg, so he's my co-founder. And that's taking our expertise and their expertise as a huge agency group and combining it to help manage our Talent 360. And then there's the fund, which it's not necessarily a business, it's a partnership. And we invest in early stage businesses. It's called Creative Ventures. We raised a $20 million first round. So over the next kind of 3 years.
And just explain that to someone who doesn't understand. So when you raise 20 million first round, that basically means you raised 20 million to do what with it?
To invest into seed and Series A companies. So usually it's around the time the founder's getting started with the business, or they've just started to get a bit of traction. We invest between like $100,000 and $1 million each time.
And basically what it is, right, is where a group of people have given you this money because they believe that you have the insight and the knowledge and the analytics to work out what business you think will do well or not, right?
Exactly. And so I do it with my partner and my cousin Sasha, who's like this genius Harvard, Oxford, but also worked at Bridgepoint guy. And he and I started investing together while I was still creating content. And we realized that I was getting access to deals that were quite good, and he knew what the deals were that were good. So we came together and did that. We did it with a few other creators. We got some actors, and we had an exit in a company called Face It, and they merged with another company for 1.5 billion, and it was like a really quick 2-year thing. And that kind of returned all of our money that we'd invested personally in these businesses, and Sasha left his job to raise this fund.
It's funny, right? Because you said in business, firstly, did you find it hard to be taken seriously because you were from a YouTube background, even though you run these businesses? And you said being new to something means you can simplify things again, which is amazing. And what our producer Jemima said, which is so true, is it takes confidence to be simple.
Yeah.
Which I really think it does. So when you went into these businesses, it's do you know the difference between net and gross? Did you know what a P&L was? Did you know what a PAYE was? How do you learn these things?
So yeah, in the very beginning, probably not, but I love to just read Wikipedia. So every time I didn't know something, I'll just spend the spare time I have reading and learning about it. But then it's also, I think, not knowing everything can be quite helpful for some of the reasons you mentioned. One is you might try something differently to everyone else, and usually that could be good. And if it's something you shouldn't be doing differently to anyone else, there's people who already know how to do that. And if you get your business to a certain place, you can hire some amazing people. And that's really the skill, I think, the most important part of being a founder is knowing how to hire well. And it's something we've had to definitely learn over time. It's not something I'm born with, but I'm starting to get a really good feel for it. And recently sitting around especially at Influencer, which is now 130 people, sitting in that senior management team meeting, I'm like, wow, we've got this to such a good place. I'm just so proud of that. And so I think like Richard Branson, for example, is kind of someone I look up to because. And
you've met him, haven't you? And I
have. And I was even on a flight with him, and it was so cool to see how, when he's on his flights, he kind of comes in last onto the plane because you don't want the whole thing to like be crazy. But when he's there, like people start to realize, and then he goes up and down and takes selfies with everyone. And then at the end of the flight, like he says thank you to everyone for flying, and he really makes everyone's experience amazing. That was another thing I took from him. But I was like, this guy is by no means like kind of a Bill Gates. I don't know why I use Bill Gates.
Yeah, but
But what he's good at is putting the right people in the right seat. And that's something I really want to get good at, because as a founder, that's really your job. You shouldn't be doing everything. If you're holding everything together on your own, you're not creating a valuable product or a valuable machine that one day can live without you.
But some would say that you're spreading yourself too thin. That's what the argument would be, right? You have 4 different businesses that you're running. What would you challenge someone who says that? So
they all really are connected. I mean, the one we didn't speak about is student accommodation. I'd say that's slightly less connected.
In South Africa, right?
Yeah, that's my chance to do a consumer business and understand like how to sell stuff on social media. So I think the underlying theme with everything is like understanding how social media affects businesses. And so when we invest into a business, the reason they bring us into some of the best rounds, so a round is something when you're investing into a business is when all the investors come together and they invest at a certain valuation. And usually we're investing alongside some of the biggest VCs in the world. And the reason they want us is because we can come in and help them when it comes to both their company using social media to sell, but also sometimes the founders wanting to understand it more. And a lot of the founders are now 20, 30 years old. So they get that this is an important part of building a business.
What do you think about content creators being the next business owners? So what do you think of something like Prime?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, I think Prime is just an incredible...
Which is Logan Paul and KSI's drink, right?
Yeah, I think almost more people know what Prime is than actually who they are now. Like some kids apparently don't know who they are, but they know Prime. And when they put Prime into a thumbnail, it gets more views than their own faces. And they're so proud of that. And it is something to be proud of. When it comes to social media people and starting businesses, I think there's no kind of better way to get into business, because going back to the money side of things, a lot of these people have made quite a bit of money. So they can take more risks. They are able to maybe hire people who are good at stuff and bring them in. And so there is this thing of being young, having a bit of money, and then also having that audience to then test and try your product. That is the perfect recipe for starting a business. And that's why I think you kind of have an unfair advantage if you're a creator launching a company.
Because you can trial and test. I didn't even think of it. That's so true.
However, the only issue with it is some creators will launch a company and it will do really well because of them. And so you got to be careful when you're testing and trialing that you're not just relying on you for it to work.
But you don't think something like Prime is that?
I think it is.
Because Prime isn't. Let's just take Prime because we're just speaking about it. Prime, for example, is like it's an energy drink. It's it's like what is it? Like a Lucozade type drink. It's like an athlete drink, right? Yeah. But is that its USP? Like, would it sell if it wasn't Logan Paul and KSI? Yeah. People buying it because it tastes good. It has the right things. Yeah. It gives you the right nootropics or whatever it is. Does it do that for you?
So I don't really drink much liquid other than water. So I'm not the target market for the drink itself, but I think the very fact that like it's stocked so well and they managed to do that, the very fact that they've got the branding they do, the fact that it's not called the KSI and Logan Paul drink, I think they're definitely going in the direction of this is bigger than they are. And the fact that they're getting people like Haaland and some of the biggest athletes in the world to become Prime ambassadors, I think that all ladders up to it not relying on them. But I guess we'll find out in 15 years from now. But I would say it's definitely going to be around.
Okay, Caspar, we like to end the podcast on 7 questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
What's a saying phrase that always makes you smile?
Oh, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
That's it.
You like that one?
I really like that one.
Is that like Michael Jordan or?
Yeah, Michael Jordan.
That's a basketball.
That's great. I love that. Could be my favorite. What scares you most about yourself?
Well, as I hit my 30s, my back is starting to give way a bit. We spoke about this earlier, actually. You don't get that so much because you're more compact.
I'm more compact. I'm like built to pull out weeds. I think. Yeah. I'm built like a gardener.
So I'm a bit worried about what's going to happen, with just my bones and so on. And then my memory, I forget everything, like everything.
Even being an entrepreneur?
I know I'm an entrepreneur.
No, but as in, because you have to remember a lot of things. Like, how are you in names? How are you in names?
Terrible.
Okay.
I write everything down. I'd say, lovely to see you. Okay, I don't know if we've met before.
I love that. That's good. When was the last time you cried?
I cried watching The Boy Who Lived, I believe it's called. It's like the story of Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
He got paralyzed, didn't he?
And it was just such an incredible film, and it was very sad. And I have a friend who's gone through a really difficult accident, and I don't know if it was that or just how amazing the film was, but it really, really did affect me.
What's something you can't let go of?
So, like legal and accountancy fees, I hate how they charge by the hour, and I have no idea. Like, what is that?
Like,
please, we live in a world with AI. We could watch them.
Yeah.
Surely there's a tool.
I did 28 hours. Did you? Did you?
Website building fees. I know this shit costs a lot of money, but I just want to know for sure I'm not being scammed. I'm sorry to my lawyer. You've created a lot of net positives for me.
What's something that you'd be embarrassed for people to know you like?
I just love a bidet, like so much. Especially the Well, the Japanese
one,
toilets,
because that hits your butthole every time.
Really
Wherever you move it, it hits it.
And in like the Middle East, it's the spray ones that's pretty good too.
Yeah.
They're slightly a bit scary because someone's touched them before and so on. But I don't really get the French normal bidets. Like it seems because they're white.
Yeah.
Are you meant to sit in them and then? Then that's horrible because.
And then you flush with your hand.
Oh, is that how you use them?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'd rather those than nothing. I don't understand how we just use paper. It's disgusting.
It's true. It's so bad.
Yeah.
That's actually so true. What turns you off?
People who are completely unaware. So, you're in a room and someone's just treating someone like shit, or they just don't realize something's going on. I struggle to understand.
What turns you on?
My fiancée.
Great answer. What do you like most about yourself?
I like my ability to connect with people. Like, I'm really proud of that, and I lost that for a little bit when I was really anxious, but I'm really happy that's back.
Love that. Before I ask you the last question, I want to ask you one more. If you have one piece of advice for people, what would that be? Because you do so many things, and you've been through a lot, and you've been anxious, so...
I think like really remembering how little anyone cares about you. Obviously, I hope Amber cares about me, my fiancée, but I think a big worry and a big problem for everyone is they overthink what other people are going to think, and they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about the bidet they're about to use.
That's great. Last question before we go. Your favorite swear word?
Fuck. 100%. Hands down. It's just so sweet. I learned it at a young age, and I just keep using it.
It's not too overused either.
Yeah.
I quite like it.
Yeah.
Caspar, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. Oh, that was amazing. Dude, that was fantastic.